Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. We are your hosts, Jason Patterson and Frank D'Amelio. Today, we have an amazing, extraordinary guest with us today. His name is Alan Larson. Alan is from the great state of Idaho. It is well known for mountains and forests and different types of stones. Most importantly, Idaho potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Good stuff.
yeah, so we are into 1,700 downloads on our podcast right now. We're in 40 different countries. And one thing that I want to say before we get started with this podcast today, guys, is anybody who is a listener out there right now, I want them to know that we're now seeking sponsorships now because we have been now doing this podcast for 6 months. And because we are getting so many listeners now, Frank and I decided that after 1,500 downloads, we were going to start asking for anybody who would like to jump on board with us and spread the love of jiu-jitsu, right, Frank?
Dead on. Dead on.
So, okay, so let's get back to it. So Alan is he is a lumberjack. Well, that's what we would call, that's what some people would call him. He is in the logging industry. So the logging industry is a very unique industry and probably very misunderstood among the public, but it is a very, very interesting and high risk job. And he will dive into his role in that job, its connections to jujitsu, because Alan also is very experienced on the mats. He is a black belt in BJJ. He owns a school called Progressive Jiu-Jitsu in Orofino, Idaho. And so he has been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, has a wealth of experience in jiu-jitsu. And of course, he's told us earlier, 30 years of experience in logging. So he has experience in both realms. So we are going to dive into the mats and into the forest.
Love it. I love it, Jason. One of the best things about our show is the kind of people we meet. How many of us have ever met a real lumberjack? Not many. I've never met one in my life. So this is going to be such a treat to our listeners to just learn about that industry and the dangers of it and the adventure of it and how it applies to jiu-jitsu. So Alan, first of all, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
And we would like to start. Yeah, our pleasure. We would like to just get started with how did you get into being a lumberjack? And also tell us a little bit about a day in the life of a lumberjack. What does that look like? What are your responsibilities? And then I know this is a lot packed into one question. And then we'll go on and maybe you can share some really cool stories about your experience.
You bet. Yeah, I'm a sixth generation logger. My family, they all mostly came from Sweden and Norway and came here and settled in about probably 1890. And my family either ranch cattle or logged. So that's kind of what my grandfather had a logging company. My dad had a logging company. My uncle had two uncles had a logging company. So it's just pretty much a family business. So as early as I can get out there, every chance I got, I was out in the woods with my grandpa, following him around and learning the business, and then I started actually physically being a part of the crew when I was about 12 years old. My grandfather had me.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I
I
started.
missed that. Did you say 12 years old?
Yeah, 12 years old. So I was about between my sixth grade and seventh grade summer. I started. Yeah, just doing little things. I
Damn.
bumped knots off of logs and kind of manual labor stuff, and then slowly I started getting more and more experience. And by the time I got into high school, I was pretty much doing my own show pretty much for my grandpa. So gained a lot of experience.
So tell us a little bit. So this has been a lifelong thing for you. Tell us a little bit about now in the logging business. What is a day in the life for you? What exactly do you do?
So usually, depending on what I do, because I do lots of different jobs for the company I work for, I pioneer roads, I process logs, I do lots of different things. So usually, if we're heavy producing, I'm usually up by 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm at the job site. I usually an hour or so drive to get out there. And then, I'd like to get the wheels turning about 4 a.m. And then, run as hard as we can, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm shovel logging, processing, or skidding, it kind of depends on how long I'm going to work. So,
Is it physically demanding?
yeah. Yeah, and it's not as physical as it used to be. Like, it used to be, like when I was hooking in the rigging, which that's what they call it, a hooker, that a log hooker. They, they're running up and down the hills, pulling cable, wrapping trees and skidding, and rigging, the yarders up. And that's one of the toughest jobs there is, I think, on earth, as far as like, demanding physically. That job is, you're just running all day, constantly back and forth, pulling rig in, and that's tough. It's a young man's, I still do that from time to time, but not as much as I used to early on.
And then, so do you work with a team of people? Is it teamwork or is it a very individualistic
It's
kind of
uh
job?
it's kind of both, it's like a lot of times I'm by myself, but it is still a teamwork thing because I have to I have to do everything, I have to lay everything out for the next guy to come, whether it be the loader operator loading my process logs or the processor processing out of the log decks that I make. I have to set everything up just right for him so I don't create a problem for him when he gets there. Try to make it easier and efficient as possible.
So you've done this all of your life? A lot of physicality in the beginning of your career. Now you said there's a little more mechanization in it. I know it's a high stress, high risk job. Can you talk about some of the risks that you face?
Yeah, there's any given time, something can go wrong, with trees especially, like as a logger, you got to look at a situation and try to guess what's going to happen. Like if I push this tree this way, then it's going to create this, and then you got to anticipate that every time, whether you're running a machine, or you're out hand falling or setting choke or there's a hazard waiting around every corner. You don't know if there's going to be a piece of wood fly at you or a chain break off and shoot the chain at you, or a mechanical failure, or you're gonna, or the if you're on adverse ground, you could tip over. And I've seen guys get killed. I haven't seen it personally, but I've seen the aftermath of guys rolling equipment and getting killed over the years. Yeah, and
Wow. Wow. That's why it's one of the most dangerous jobs in the United States.
yeah. Well, one of my, when I was about 10 years old, and my grandfather's operation, 18-year-old kid out of high school working the landing, he got killed. And that was kind of the first fatality of our family operation. Yeah. So it was kind of it really was hard on my dad because
That's
my dad tried to save the kid's life, and he had to cut him out of the log deck and get him out and try to do, life-saving measures, and didn't work out.
that's tragic. That's definitely tragic. That's a hard thing to deal with. So that, I mean, that's the industry that you've been in all of your life. And then tell us a little bit about the BJJ. When did that come in? You're a black belt, so you must be doing it for a while as well.
Yeah, so didn't always do this a logging business all the time. I got out, I did it all through, as a kid, and I got out of high school, and I went into trade school and became a heavy equipment operator. So I traveled around doing that, running big machines, and I did that for about 10 years. And in that time, I was working of course, I was during that time I was coming back home and hobby logging. I couldn't never get out of the woods fully. I would work in Washington and then come home on the weekends and do whatever kind of logging I can get my hands on still. So even though I was out of that realm, I still kind of continued on. But I worked in a place called Richland, Washington, and Hanford was the nuclear reservation, and I worked out there for a while. And that's kind of where I started the jiu-jitsu back in 2006, 7. And I started out there, and then later on, my coach at the time got out of it. So then I became kind of essentially the coach at the time. It's a little bit different now, not back then, because there wasn't a lot of black belts around. There was only one black belt in the whole state of Idaho when I started. So, now
Wow,
there's hundreds
that's
of them.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Keith Owen was the only black. I don't know.
So when you
What's that?
Yeah,
sorry,
I've
so
heard of him.
when you started teaching, what belt did you have?
I was a blue belt initially. Yeah, I was a blue belt, and I kind of had a small group of guys I taught, a dozen adults. So I kind of did that all the way to blue, purple, and then I actually moved to Idaho when I was a purple belt. Later stage of my purple belt.
And how did that continue on to you becoming a black belt and owning your own academy?
So at that time when I came here, it was kind of my thing was to move to bring jiu-jitsu here because it wasn't here. I kind of started out in my garage, and then slowly started gaining more and more students to where the garage just wasn't big enough for the garage, so we had to find a building. And that's kind of we kind of got into where we're at today. So that's 10 years.
So how many students? So so how many students do you have now?
I have 30 active students right now.
Nice.
And we're usually in between the 30.
So Jason, you must have some questions about tying his experience in jiu-jitsu to the logging and vice versa. As
Yeah,
a gym
Frank.
owner, you see these connections.
Yeah, I was talking a little earlier after we had a morning class this morning, and I was talking to some of my students, and I tell them a lot of times I tell my students about some of the podcasts that we do, and I was explaining that we had a podcast with somebody who does logging, and I was saying I need to ask you this question, Alan. It's difficult for anyone in jiu-jitsu to stay disciplined and consistent enough to be able to train and progress in jujitsu. And with you being a logger, you have to physically exert your body in your job all day long. How do you go from the physical exertion that you experience during the day and having enough energy and motivation to be like, okay, now it's time to go to the mats and train?
Yeah,
Can you
man.
give us some insight on how you are able to do that?
You bet. What a great question. It's really difficult. I'm not gonna lie. It used to be a lot easier for me, but the last years it's been really hard. And you have to. Number one is you have to listen to your body. Like some days you're beat. You've been beating the brush all day. You're physically dehydrated, beat down, and hey, you ain't gonna have a hard training session that night. It's not gonna happen. So yeah, so you have to you have to listen to your body and then try to set a pace. Don't try to eat the whole pie all at once. You have to pace yourself throughout what you put out during the day. And so one of the things is I have to do is I have to shift my mindset from the work mindset to going to practice, going to jiu-jitsu, teaching class. And to be honest with you, is me being an instructor, that's kind of gave me the discipline to do it, I think. Because it would be I would probably, if I was just doing jiu-jitsu, like showing up and practicing, I wouldn't feel as obligated to be there. Does that make sense? Because I'm the leader. I have to be there. I have to be the one that set. I can't I can't come tonight because I don't feel good or I'm tired. So that's kind of I didn't really allow myself to. So that's kind of I didn't not show up.
Yeah, and that's the key to progress is just keep showing up too, right? I mean, that's fortunate for you that you were able to teach like right from blue belt. You started teaching because, like you said, it was so long ago that there weren't a lot of black belts around to help share jujitsu. That definitely sounds like that helped a lot. You had being able to teach so early on kind of forced you to be like, well, these other people are depending on me, so I need to show up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just having that, I'm not gonna let myself have an out on this, or I'm not gonna leave a boat to get back on. So
Do you think that coming from such a physically demanding and dangerous industry, you adapted to jujitsu a little more easily than, for example, maybe an accountant who goes
yeah.
into jujitsu like, holy crap, I got a 200-pound guy on top of me. What, I can't breathe. Like, do you feel like you adapted quicker to the rough, not, it is the gentle art, but to the physical challenges of being uncomfortable. Do you think your career gave you an advantage in that sense?
Yeah, I really think so because you were always pushing yourself to the max. And so I would show up to jujitsu, and even just being completely dead, I'd have to be efficient with everything I do. Just like I would, the same approach would be to logging, the same approach that my grandfather, I would be out there with my grandfather working, and he was in his 70s, and I was like 16, and he would work me into the freaking ground, and he wouldn't even look like he was just kind of made every move count though. So that kind of stuck with me is to make every move count, like not having the fastest but just making everything count. Maximum efficiency. That's what you try to shoot for, especially when you get old and slow and speed up.
I
I think
love
there's
that,
a
Jason.
threshold.
Jason, yeah, I'm sorry about that thing, but I was going to say that kind of calls us back to a great past interview we did with Andrew on efficiency and using your energy management. So for our listeners who want to go back and look at Andrew's interview, uh, he's basically talking about the same concept. That's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. So that leads me to the next thought that I had here about your job in jujitsu. You mentioned earlier about processing. Processing was a word that you used about when you go logging.
Yeah.
So processing sounds to me a lot like jujitsu, like you have a systematic approach to how you're doing your job, right? So you have to do this first and that next, and you can't skip steps because if you do, something can be dangerous if you do, and other people have to know what step you're on so that everybody's on the same page. So can you give our listeners a little insight into the connection there? And if you can make one for us between that systematic approach and that strategic thinking that you have to use out in the forest and that concept of thinking systematically also on the mats.
Yeah, you bet. That's a very good point there. Like if you got a good team, the guys that work together, I know what he needs. He knows what I need. The loader operator, he knows where he wants the logs. And so everything is just smooth. It's seamless. And there's a lot of parallels to that on the mat, of course, as far as like, here's here's how we're going to operate. We're going to make sure that we cover these things, and we have that continuity as well, so if I'm out, if I'm the next guy in line, he could take over and flawlessly, seamlessly take over the class. And so that's kind of, I try to have the same kind of setup as a logging crew as you would have on the mats, as everybody's job's important. It's just, everybody's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so when you're on the mats, do you utilize, like, you have to use a lot of communication on the mats with your students too to make sure that everybody's on the same page with everybody being safe, and training safely, making sure people are like taking care of each other, not getting hurt. Do you use that kind of educational concept that you take from the mats? Do you use that in the workplace too when you're out logging? Do you help people that are just starting out in logging, maybe understand the concepts of logging and what you're doing and helping them to communicate so there's good teamwork?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I've tried to take some of them same approaches to teaching jujitsu, like the fundamental basics, try to teach them to a new guy. It's just starting out. And I don't have as much patience in that business for people that don't listen as I do kind of in jujitsu, right? It's a business and we got to do uh, out there like, hey, if you're not going to listen, because I'm going to try to give you all the information to make you successful, then, if you're not going to listen to me, then I'm not going to waste my time either out there. We're going to find somebody that's going to listen and do it right.
Right. And the cost of somebody making a mistake could be somebody's life in that
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah. So the forgiveness of the person breaking in out there versus jujitsu is a lot different. But yeah, essentially, if you're gonna start out in the business like a white belt, you're gonna learn the fundamental jobs and the fundamental, do's and don'ts of that. And it really is the same outline, just different.
Right. It's that's the beauty of jujitsu. You can superimpose that systematic nature onto any other endeavor because it's always the fundamentals that count the most. It's not the fancy stuff, right? It's the fundamentals, sticking to the system.
Yeah, Frank, we were talking. Can you were asking Alan a little earlier about techniques that he uses. So can we talk a little bit
Yes.
about technique? You were asking him about if he uses an axe and like if he does, like what kind of angle he
If he does,
uses and
like does he
like a
does he do
wedge and a
the
triangle and
wedge or the up
yeah,
or the down?
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. And
tell
I
us a little
kind
bit
of
about technique and how that translates also to jujitsu, right? There's many ways to get the same job done.
There's a lot of things tie into that. Like, so yeah, if I'm gonna split a piece of wood, I use it's called the vortex or the figure eight. So the axe kind of, so I get the upswing and then downswing perfectly. Just like I kind of move the axe like this. Sometimes, I'll go over the shoulder, hand down. So yeah, that's yeah, I try to go straight down. I don't like if I'm doing like a tree, I don't hardly chop trees with axes anymore, but mostly splitting, is what I use an axe for, splitting our firewood. But yeah, there's definitely techniques to that, and I have a thing called a hookaroon, they call it. And I can hook the piece of wood and then pick it up, drop it without bending over and using my back. So I use that tool as leverage, like I would use jujitsu. I use that tool to minimize the wear on the body, bending over, picking up a block of wood, 100 times. It gets pretty repetitive. So I have to, I use that a lot.
You just need to come up with a move in jujitsu that's called the hookaroon. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, I see a
We can
lot of
brainstorm that.
like a lot of the grips that I use, like grabbing the wrist and then transferring them grips, really ties into the axemanship and how you grab the handle and how you're able to transfer that handle at different angles to do the work that you have to do. And it ties in to when I grab a wrist, I'm on that wrist and my body's stapled to that arm after that. And then I can move the grip and adjust it, as I need to. So that really kind of helps
yeah, I,
me.
I don't I don't know if I'd want to try to break your grips, Alan. I think that your grips are probably ridiculous. I don't even know how your students even break your grips when you get a hold of their gi.
Yeah, yeah, the grips are, it's weird. I feel like I have to like grabbing the gi is hard for me than grabbing a wrist. Like grabbing the gi, I try not.
A wrist is like an axe, right?
Yeah, exactly. The handle part. So when I grab a gi, I try not to grab the gi too much because it's hard on your hands to grab and pull on that gi, especially because my hands they close good when it comes to that grabbing that cloth. It bothers my hands, so I try to use the gi grip to set up my choke and not and not give it away by pulling so much on it, but really sinking that grip in for my choke. So I will grab the gi, but I don't try to grip fight with it so much. But the wrist, if I get a hold of a wrist, that's perfect.
Yeah,
They're
the
not getting.
angle
They're
too,
not.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
I got
angle too, right, Frank? I would like his like, he understands like the angle you have to use, to swing an axe to make it work well. So on the mats, things are sometimes a game of inches. So you know that leverage that you need to cut that angle just right so you can finish that choke.
yeah, it helps. It's a really good that's kind of one of my hobbies is yeah, work is a hobby, right? Like firewood and axemanship's kind of one of my hobbies. That's what I do. It's kind of one of my training methods too, actually. Of it's kind of one of my I everybody like I try when I'm going to do something like I try to work the wood for 3 or 4 hours and using the hookaroon, using the axes, being efficient. I'll run two hookaroons and one in each hand and you know angle swinging. Yeah, it's there's a lot to it. A lot of leverage used in logging and forestry work. Lots of leverage. Hopefully you didn't pause on me. You still there?
No, we're still here. Jason, there's so many like connections here. I have so many notes about all of our connections from logging to jujitsu and vice versa. Do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask?
Yes, I have one more. So I was thinking too earlier about the crossover between, can you give like our listeners a little bit of advice from somebody who works a blue collar working class type job that you work where you're constantly using your hands and your body, and can you give some advice to people who are out there that train jujitsu but they have a physical job, and what they can do to continue training and not give up and not let the physical exertion of their job affect their abilities to continue to train.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going through it right now is what you have to do. You're pushing yourself beyond, and you're if you're working hard. You say you're a concrete finisher. You might be a drywaller. All them jobs are difficult and kind of ergonomically not the best. So you have to make sure that your physical fitness level is where it has to be able to push it on the mats and fall, because if you're going in there, you're busting your ass all day and you go in and train jujitsu like an animal, you're going to have some physical problems, some breakdowns. So you have to have your rehab, your physical fitness, your diet, nutrition, everything on point for the maximum output of jujitsu. Now, and you have to be honest with yourself and be like, okay, I'm not physically ready to train that hard, so I need to dial up my physical fitness and my rehab. Really important.
And take care
That
of your
is
body too, right? I'm
Yeah.
assuming you need to, you have to have a lot of recovery time too. Like, if you're exerting your body like that, you need to really take care of your body.
Yeah, you reach the point of decline at a certain point. Like you can't and you don't feel it as much when you're in your 20s and 30s. You go and go, but when you hit, I to be flat out honest, the last 2 years I've started to kind of feel the pull of the hours and the repetitive motions on the body, the ergonomic issues, sitting in one place, running a machine, blowing, getting your knees banged up, falling down, and then going to jujitsu, rolling, it's tough, and sometimes like I feel like I'm just treading water, sometimes because I'm physically so that's kind of a realization is in order for me to take it to that level, keep that level of intensity, I have to have a rehab and fitness program, recovery program, all that in place, or I can't push it, on the mats in my 40s like I used to if without that.
Yeah, and mentally, right, it can be frustrating. So how do you what do you tell yourself? Like, how do you deal with the emotions of that? Like,
Yeah.
being able to continue training, like,
Good
you know?
man, such a good question because I'll tell you what, it's like I've kind of come to that like you feel like okay, I can't produce like I did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So I have to like instead of looking at it like, oh, I'm doomed, like this is the end. It's like, okay, well, what's my mission going to be going forward? What do I have to focus on? Number one, what physically can I do with the amount of time I have and just be real efficient about managing all that, the time, everything. I have to manage time better. I have to recover better. And I have to, do more things to help the team out that might not be being the guy, the runner and gunner like in the past that I've been. I sometimes I have to take another role. The journey I'm still going forward, but the role may be a little bit differently going forward. Maybe I don't roll
Yeah,
every day like an animal. Maybe I focus 2 hard days a week, and the rest is mostly recovery and teachings. The journey, you have to adjust. You have to make adjustments all the time. And
yeah,
yeah,
longevity
mentally,
is important. That's a good
I was gonna say one more thing. Mentally, it can kick a guy's ass. Coming to that point, like and it could pull you down if you let it. But people out there you're not alone. Like there's real struggle, and hey, the older you get, you're slower. You're not going to move as fast. These younger guys with athleticism, they're gonna give you a hard freaking time, and that's just life. You're not, you become a black belt, and everybody thinks that you're invincible. Hey, it's not the case. You learn to make adjustments to survive. And it's tough. It's tough when you get older, but the mission still continues, the mission is never over.
Yeah, the
Never
journey,
over.
you use the word journey, we use that word a lot when we talk about jujitsu on the mats too, that your journey is your journey. So you can't compare yourself to others. You can't, push yourself as much as some other people as you age, and especially if you have a job that you have where you're exerting your body the way you are. It's important to continue the mental part of it can discourage people from continuing to train. So what do you do to encourage, like, if you have somebody who's on the mats that has a physical job and they're getting frustrated because it's hard for them to stay on the mats. What would you say to encourage somebody to continue to train?
Well, I would say this, first of all, you're pushing yourself. You're gonna have some crappy days on the mat. You're not gonna be 100%, and then it's gonna suck. But I guarantee you, set yourself up. Don't overdo it. Don't, I'm going to train 5 days a week. Try to set yourself up. Try to find that balance. Okay. I can go this day and this day. I could be consistent in going at this day. I want to stick with consistency. Just try to stick with consistency,
Mm.
you know, 2, 3 days a week. I know I can make that. Okay. And hey, if I want to put out more, I can put out more, but don't overload yourself. Don't overload yourself to diminishing returns. Try to find that balance of I'm going to be consistent if I train this number of days. I know I can do that and maintain. And hey, if you want to step it up to, in time, you'll pick up more sessions, but don't overload yourself, guys. If you got a physical job, try to take care of yourself, number one, and try to find a good point to manage and maintain and not blow yourself up, not injure yourself.
Yeah, and consistency doesn't always mean coming and rolling too, Alan, right? I mean,
Yes.
consistency also means just getting on the mats and stretching. If you have a physical job and you just want to get on the mats and just work your flexibility, stretch out so you're moving your body, you do that one night, 2 nights a week, just working on your flexibility and stretching so you're staying mobile. That's still training.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, and like really emphasize on your physical rehab and fitness too. And that's something that I've kind of slipped up on that, because of the demanding job. And it's like, oh, I don't got time for it. And you pay for it, and I've paid for it. Now it's like, oh well, now I know I have to step instead of rolling hard 4 nights a week. Then I'm gonna cut out the 2 nights of rolling and put that on focus on my body and getting it back up and running right. Nutrition,
Yeah.
you know, there's so much garbage out there that food that it's hard to maintain. I'd say simple. Keep it simple. Keep everything simple.
That's good advice right there, right, Frank? Keeping it simple.
I'll tell you, Thoreau would love those words. Very poetic and very true. 100%.
Yeah. All right. This is great. Frank, let's get some takeaways.
All right. Well, and lots of notes here, lots of takeaways. Alan, you are a man of a lot of wisdom, and there are so many things that we could take away from this. I'm going to start with one of the things you said that I really liked, that in your job, you learn to look at the situation and anticipate what might happen. So thinking moves ahead. Where can we go if I go this way? Where can we go if I go that way? You said that there's always a hazard waiting around every corner in your career. And gosh, that is so true in jujitsu. That was just such a nice melding of two ideas. I just learned some cool vocabulary, hobby logging, and axemanship. I just think that's really cool. I got a couple of new vocabulary words, so thank you for that. One of the things that you said, and you just touched on it, but it is inspiring, that when you moved, you had your purple belt and you just started in your garage with a few people and you built that up to your gym. I just want to emphasize and highlight that for anybody who's taking on like a dream, something you're trying to do. Started his garage. I mean, that's such a humble beginning. Took his time, built his business, and now he's got, you know, 30 plus students and he's got his own facility. I love that story. Even though you just touched on it, I think it's very important for our listeners to see that clearly. You mentioned something that is so true for old people, but I think young people too. Listen to your body. Because if you don't listen to your body, you're not going to pace yourself and you're going to pay a price for that. I thought that was excellent advice to remind us of. I have so many things here, but I really want to get to the end of the conversation, which was really deep. Your advice for people who have a physical job, and I'm going to say I'm a teacher, so my job is not physical at all, but it's very
It's
mental.
mental.
Like I'm always up there, I'm always performing. It's very mental. So sometimes when I have to go to jujitsu, I'm like, oh, I'm tired.
That's
And it's not your
compassion
kind
fatigue.
of tired.
That's
It's a
that's
different kind of
compassion.
tired.
That's compassion fatigue. They call that. Yeah.
And it's a real thing.
No, it
It's a
is. It
real
is.
thing.
Oh,
So your advice, I think applies both to people who have physical jobs and people who have mental jobs. I love that you said pushing yourself is great. However, you need to mentally reframe. There needs to be balance and consistency. You do not need to go 4 days hard. If you're tired, go to the gym. And like Jason said, do some stretching, do a couple of light flow rolls. Everybody's going to be cool with that. Everybody's going to respect that. And you're letting your body rehab. So you kind of gave us the recipe to bake a cake that is going to work for everybody. Yes, you can be physically assertive, but give yourself rehab, give yourself recovery time. Watch what you put in your mouth, watch your diet, watch your nutrition, and all of that will leave you in a place where you can get the maximum output for where you are in life at that part. I think that was the best recipe for success for both young, old, physical workers, blue collar workers, and white collar workers. I think everybody could benefit a great deal from that. And I hope I did it justice in wrapping it up like that because
it's
it was
beautiful.
really great. Yeah. So usually at this point, Jason and I invite our guests anytime they want to come to Massachusetts, roll with us. But I do not want to roll with a lumberjack. I don't want to feel those grips on my wrist. But you're welcome to come and participate by watching. You certainly can do that. We
I'd
would
love.
love. No, really, please come if you're ever in Massachusetts. Look us up. We will take you to Boston. It's an hour away. We'll show you our gym. Jason is a phenomenal coach, and you guys can share a lot of wisdom. It would just be a lot of fun.
That'd be
So
great, man.
I would like to. Yeah, you now have a place in Massachusetts to train. that, a bunch of great guys and girls. We'd love to have you. You have just such a humble, simple wisdom that is very powerful, and we appreciate you.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the call
yeah.
to action today, Frank, the call to action is what?
Well, we have a couple of calls to action. The first call to action is for everybody to take that mindset reframe advice so that you can stay healthy and train for longevity. And the other call to action for everybody is when you hear excellent wisdom like this and you enjoy it and you've listened to the end, would you please share this with somebody you think could benefit? Somebody who's in jujitsu or somebody who's not in jujitsu, because wisdom is wisdom. It's gold. So give this gold, share this gold with other people, drop some hearts for us, give us some comments, and know that we appreciate all of our listeners and all the great feedback we're getting. It's
Awesome. All right, Alan, thank you so much for joining us today and with all that wisdom. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys, and it was a great podcast. I enjoyed it a lot, guys. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
you said
enjoyed.
you've been listening to some, right?
Yeah, and you guys are doing something that nobody else is doing. Talking about guys that are out here grinding, that are not, we're not Gordon Ryan, we're not world famous, but we're out here, and I really appreciate you guys seeing that and seeing the benefit of it.
power to the people. Power to the people, always.
All right, sounds good. All right, Alan, take care. Hopefully we see you soon.
You too.
All right.
right,
Thank you so
Take
much.
care, Alan.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Peace
See
and
you guys.
namaste. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful connections we've explored between the art of jiu-jitsu and your career. In your workplace and in jiu-jitsu, you learn to adapt and navigate challenges. So remember that persistence and the courage to embrace the lessons that you learn are the keys to your growth both on the mat and in your career.